Hello, wonderful people, and welcome to Question Time. So, welcome to Simply Scuba, where we answer all of your scuba diving questions. If you do have any scuba diving related questions, let us know down in the comments below, and they'll all be answered in next week's show. I think next week's show, because it's Christmas week, it's all going to be a bit sort of jimble-jambled. So it's not going to be on the Friday, which is actually Christmas Day, because we have a special video going live on Christmas Day. But I think it's going to be the day before or the day after. It's not going to be on Friday, basically. But if you do want any of your questions answered, let us know, and we'll elaborate on them. So starting things off, I have to remind you that today's episode of Question Time is sponsored by our very own Teespring store, but more about that later. Today I'm wearing Cave Shark t-shirt, if you want something like that, you can get some money off, so stay tuned. So, jumping straight into the questions. So the first question comes from Robbie Johnson on one of our daily decos, and Robbie says RAID, which is a training agency, offers IDC training. IDC is your instructor development course, so how you become an instructor. So RAID offers IDC training for under $400 US. Paddy wants up to $4,000 for this. Struth. Is RAID a gimmick? No, I mean, $4,000 seems a lot for an IDC. I don't know what you're getting for that. The sort of the base standard just to get your ALSI, your open water scuba instructor. That cost me about £1,000, sort of ballpark. I don't know what they're charging you to warrant $4,000. But hey, but $400 for the RAID. I don't know much about the RAID instructor development course personally, but one thing that I do know about RAID is that they're primarily digital, so that's where they're saving a lot of costs and sort of prices, because they don't produce all these manuals, and they're not, because with Paddy, you get your instructor manual, you get a whole folder, you get a bag as well, and you get all these sort of bits and bobs and all this kind of printed stuff. So all of that adds up the cost, whereas with RAID, a lot of it's just digital PDFs that you just download, which makes it more eco-friendly, but it also makes it cheaper. So I think it's legitimate. I'd be very wary of paying £4,000 for your IDC with Paddy. I don't know what they're throwing in. The thing is, when you do your IDC, a lot of the time the dive center, they can throw in sort of other additional extras if you want. So they can throw in certain specialty course instructor training. So I imagine that's what's sort of going into the 4K. But no, RAID isn't a gimmick. They're relatively new compared to a lot of the other training agencies. But I think the main reason why they're cheaper, almost like suspiciously cheaper, is because they just don't print any course materials, so they're keeping the sort of costs low. But it's a good question, and it's always good to kind of look around. But yeah, £4,000, it's truth. Next question comes from Dive with Matt on Question Time number 5 last week's. He says, "Hey Mark and Sean, hello. Hope you're both well. Yeah, so far so good. My lingering cough still hasn't gone 100%, but yeah, I think we're fine. I've got a question, if I may. Of course you may. I've just certified as a DM, a dive master, and I'm looking at doing my ALSI and the MSDT. So ALSI is your open water scuba instructor, and MSDT is your master scuba diver trainer or something. It's kind of the next step up from an ALSI. It just means that you can teach some specialities. My understanding is MSDT is 25 certs plus 5 specialities. I think that's correct, yes. I'm doing my IDC in the UK, cool. So one of the specialities I'll be doing, so basically you get your ALSI, and then you can teach the core sort of courses, so open water, advanced, rescue, dive master, but then to be able to teach different specialities, you have to do that specialty instructor course. When you've done 5 different specialities, a bit like your advanced, then you become a MSDT, and after you've qualified 25 students, then you can sort of become an MSDT. So he's looking at the different specialities. So the first one is dry suit. Yeah, that's kind of a given. I'll also be doing my nitrox. That's very good for an instructor. Are there 3 others you would advise of taking that would be beneficial? Having spoken to my local dive centre, they said deep and drift would be good for UK waters. Yeah, I'm looking at doing rec. Rec's always interesting. On top of the 4 listed above, would you say they're a good mix, or would you go for anything else? Dry suit and nitrox, they're a given in the UK. You're going to use that a lot. What is it? Deep and drift. Yeah. It's there's 2 different ways of doing it. You either sort of not pander to, but you sort of go down the route that your dive center sort of knows that, oh yeah, we sell a lot of these specialities, and then you can then teach them as well. Or you can go on kind of the flip side of things and teach the stuff that they don't really have instructors for. Now, obviously, you're not going to do some of the sort of stuff that's more for tropical waters, but maybe like search and recovery. Night dive is always an interesting one. Peak performance buoyancy is always kind of interesting. Or you could go down the sort of the technical route. Start trying to go down to the sort of the Tech 40s and whatnot, or side mount. Side mount's always an amazing one to be able to teach. So, but yeah, I mean the ones that that you've mentioned: dry suit, nitrox, rec, deep, drift. They're all very good. They'll be good for you as well to sort of get a sort of a greater understanding of sort of what's happening. And it will make you a very useful instructor if you ever do plan on sort of moving around. But in the UK, yeah, they're all pretty good. I wouldn't sort of change many of them, but yeah, definitely kind of look around and try and decide whether, because if they've got 6 instructors and they all have exactly the same sort of specialities, and someone walks in and they want something a little bit different, then it's kind of useless. You're just going to lose that student. Whereas if you're that one instructor that does something a little bit different, oh yeah, I can do introduction to rebreather or something, then yeah, you can sort of be quite useful. But yeah, it is good that you're sort of thinking about it and yeah, really sort of looking into it. Question 3 comes from Paul on Question Time. He says, "Hi, Merc and Short." I think your autocorrect is getting a little bit ahead of itself. I'm heading towards my first Tri-Lam dry suit soon. Which seal system, particularly for wrist seals, do you think is best for swapping out seals and adding on dry gloves? I'm planning to go with silicone seals all round. Yep. Also, is there any customization that you wish you had on your dry suit? Anything to consider that people usually don't? And a follow-up question, if it pleases the court, of course. What's the best pre-dive drink, and what's the best post and post dive drink to partake in? Okay, so looking at seal systems. So yeah, my usual sort of recommendation is silicone, just because it's so much easier. As far as separate seal systems, I mean, QB is one of the sort of the biggest, because they got the sort of metal rings and they're very well known and fantastic for dry gloves. I use Waterproof Ultima. Very similar, but it's kind of a plastic version. You also get Fourth Element Ellipse, which I'm not a huge fan on, to be brutally honest. It's got some sort of sharp edges on it, but to be honest, I think the first one I saw was probably a sample, so the actual final product might be sort of much better. QB's fine. I just found that the logo, they got that kind of reflective ring kind of round it, that plastic sort of bit, that just falls off and that just goes straight in the recycling for me. But yeah, they're good. QB, they're pretty easy to sort of get around. They're best if they're factory fitted, because I've tried fitted sort of QB to a dry suit, and it's a lot of sort of turn it inside out and Ultima, if your dry suit is like a waterproof or anything with Cytec sort of cuff seals, you can just fit waterproof Ultima. They're very quick and easy. Touch wood, they've never leaked on me, and very quick and easy to change a cuff seal, and very quick and easy to sort of fit a dry glove. So my personal sort of recommendation is waterproof Ultima if you have like ISS sort of fitted to your dry suit in the first place. Is there any customization you would wish you had on your dry suit? Anything to consider that people usually don't? Not really. I mean, obviously make sure it has kind of everything that you need. It's got all of your pockets and all that kind of stuff. If you're planning for really long dives, then get a P-valve fitted. No, I mean, people go for they have their name like embroidered on the pockets and stuff. I don't really go in for that, and that's about it. I mean, some manufacturers you can get sort of different colours and sort of panels, and yeah, that's just up to sort of personal preference. But I don't think there's a great deal of sort of customization. It's the real thing is spending time, especially if they're making it from scratch, making sure that everything's sort of correct, so your arm length is sort of perfect, so that ring system isn't kind of shunting up against your thumb, because that can get quite uncomfortable on a long dive if you have a sort of a ring system constantly pushing on that sort of thumb joint. Yeah, no, there's not a huge amount. Yeah, just kind of think about where you're going to go, and if you can kind of save some costs by getting like a integrated heating valve fitted to your dry suit. The actual valves themselves, I haven't noticed a huge difference between sort of the high profile and low profile. For me, they all tend to really do the job. There's nothing else really that you're missing out on. And the follow-up question, pre-dive drink. I quite like a Lucozade Sport or something with a sort of fairly powerful flavour, and something that's going to hydrate me, but nothing too sort of caffeinated or anything that's going to sort of linger. And then post-dive, yeah, again, I like something like an orange juice to really get the sort of any taste of salt out of my mouth, and I don't tend to drink much alcohol, so I just a coffee or a hot chocolate if it's cold out. If it's hot, then yeah, I normally just stick with orange juice. Kyle Knickerblocker on question time number 5 says, "Good morning, gentlemen." Good morning. I'm going to be getting into tech diving. Cool. My wife and daughter are not as interested in tech diving. Sure. What dive computers would be good that would grow with me, but wouldn't break the bank for my ladies? Enjoy my daily deco every morning. Thank you. So if you're planning on moving into tech, then I'd look at sort of sheer water dive computers, just because they have a sort of a recreational mode where it's more like a recreational dive computer. You can fiddle around with some of the settings, and the display is nice and sort of easy to read. I like the Perdix. The Petrol is very similar. It's just a little bit bigger. The Petrol is kind of the newer version. There is now the Peregrine, which is an outstanding recreational dive computer. It's basically a light version of the Perdix, so it has a lot of the like technical stuff just stripped out, and it's a bit more sort of basic, but it still has that color screen. It's got a rechargeable battery on the inside, which is all very funky. But if you're planning on moving on to tech, then you do need to invest in a decent dive computer, and with the Perdix, when you then start to move into technical diving and you want a bit more customization, you want to sort of fiddle around with the settings on the inside, you then change your Perdix to tech mode, and then it unlocks a lot of extra features that you can then start fiddling around with once you know what you're kind of doing. And it's not just adding helium to your mix or anything, making it trimix or anything, but it's kind of gradient factors and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely look at sheer water. For the wife and daughter, yeah, the Peregrine will be sort of lovely. But yeah, there's so many dive computers out there for recreational diving. You can't go far wrong. But for technical diving, Shearwater tend to be sort of one of the preferred brands. So yeah, I definitely sort of hang around Shearwater. As I mentioned earlier, today's episode of Daily Deco is sponsored by our very own Teespring store. So there's going to be a link down in the description below for our merchandise store. So check out some of our t-shirts. This one is Cave Shark, which I think is quite funky. I'm going to try and take a photo of myself and upload it onto Instagram a little bit later, because that's what we want you lovely boys and girls to do. Is if you have been buying our merchandise, we want to see you guys wearing it, because we don't really get out and about to the dive sites and we don't see it anymore. So it'll be really nice to actually sort of see you guys upload some photos. If you do, then just sort of tag us at simplyscuba, all one word, and that will sort of get our attention, and yeah, we might even feature you on our social media. But if you want 15% off of your Teespring order, use the promo code DailyDeco, all one word, DailyDeco, and that will get you 15% off of your Teespring's order. Okay, the next question comes from Faddy on the light travel backplate video. So this was one from one of my my own channel that I did between the, you all know. So this is when I'm talking about my my lightweight travel BCD for when I'm sort of traveling abroad. I made a backplate and harness system that's very, very lightweight and very sort of streamlined. And Faddy says, you seem like you're a fan of Apex, but why not an Apex backplate? They also do an aluminium one. So if you haven't seen the video, I have a Apex, or is it a D18 wing, which is a really small wing. Most of my regulators are Apex. The harness itself, I think, is Apex as well, but the backplate is a Mars XR aluminium backplate, and there's no real reason other than the Mars one. It's just kind of funky. The first time I saw it, it's all kind of skeleton and it's all sort of funky, sort of angular, whereas the Apex one is very much just a traditional backplate just made out of aluminium. So the main reason why I didn't go for an Apex sort of aluminium backplate is just style, to be honest. If the X Deep aluminium backplate, or sort of magnesium alloy backplate, whatever they make it out of, if that was available when I was building that sort of backplate system, I probably would have gone with that one, just because I like the ergonomics and the style of that. But this is the main benefit of backplate and harness systems. You can mix and match, and I can't say all the time, but most of the time it's going to kind of line up. So yeah, you can sort of mix your brands. Apex is one of my top brands. They make wonderful equipment. They're a wonderful company to sort of work with and sort of deal with. But yeah, as far as their aluminium backplate, yeah, if you kind of scrub the name off the branding, it would be hard to sort of define and say, oh yeah, that's obviously an Apex backplate. So yeah, I just went something with a bit more flair. Aaron Thornburn on an Instagram direct message says, good day. Looking at the Mark II and the Mark II-i, so these would be the Garmin Mark II dive computers, the new one. The Mark II basically, is the AI, the air integration, really worth the extra coin? Mark II here is 2,200 money, and the Mark II is 2,800 monies. Is air integration really worth it? So it's an age-old question. It's a matter of, yeah, it is quite handy, and it is kind of the sort of the modern thing. Quite a lot of dive computers are coming out with wireless air integration, but there's the few caveats. The first one is the dive computer is normally a bit more expensive because it's got that sort of transmitter receiver on the inside, as well as the programming. You have to buy the transmitter as well. They're usually about 200 and something quid, or sort of however many dollars or monies wherever you are. Is AI really worth it? it's not really something that I can specifically say yes or no. It's down to personal preference. We've survived how many decades of scuba diving without it, so it's not essential. Is it worth the extra money? I did. I upgraded to air integration and a transmitter as well. They're very useful. It's just that kind of redundant backup in that I always have my SPG so I can see how much gas I've got, but if I'm not looking at that gauge continuously, then I can miss a sudden leak. Whereas with wireless air integration, if you get down to a certain gas pressure, it will start to alert you. But it has quite a few benefits over that. The main one that I tend to use is gas time remaining. So you can look at your pressure gauge and see that you've got 150 bar, and then you can sort of work out based on your sack rate and all that kind of stuff and experience roughly how long that's going to last. Whereas your dive computer is continually monitoring your gas supply. It's monitoring your depth. It's monitoring your breathing rate. So it can legitimately, continuously say, right, this is how much gas you have left. This is how quickly you're breathing. This is how deep you are. At these figures, you're going to run out of gas in 20 minutes. And that can be really useful. So you can look at it, instead of just seeing 150 bar or whatever, you see you've got 20 minutes of air remaining. So it makes it a bit more real. And then as that starts to go down, you go, ooh, Struth, I should really start to sort of shallow up. And then after the dive as well, it's recording your breathing rates, so you can sort of practice sort of your different breathings and see how it quantitatively sort of improves your breathing rate, your sack rate, and all that kind of stuff. So on one dive, you can practice different breathing rates and see how it actually improves, and then afterwards you have a log of it. So yeah, I do like wireless air integration. It's not for everybody. If you're trying to save some coin, then yeah, sure. It's not essential, but for me, I do sort of appreciate it, to be honest. Next question comes from Stephen Sanford on Twinset's video, and he asks, why do you have your SPG, your submersible pressure gauge, on one post and the computer AI transmitter on the right post? Is there a reason why they couldn't be together on the left? If you shut down the right-sided valve, you'd lose the info for your computer. I realised that you use the SPG then for your ascent. Yep. I have my SPG and air transponder on a high-pressure splitter coming off a single port. I too have the transmitter on a short hose. Yep. We'll be starting my tech training with doubles in January. So the main reason why I have a traditional analog SPG coming off of my left shoulder and then a wireless air transmitter coming off of my right is kind of, as you mention it, that kind of redundancy. So the main reason why we have like one regulator and one inflator coming off the left post and one inflator and one regulator coming off the right post is if you're swinging in an overhead environment, then as you're sort of swimming along, if you are sort of having to squeeze through and you do kind of bump along the ceiling, the valve on your left hand side is naturally going to twist in a closed position, so you want to be able to sort of continue to breathe through the sort of the right post. And that's why I don't have like all of my chips on one side. So yeah, if one side does get closed, I still have everything on the other side. You still obviously monitor your sort of both of them, but yeah, it's kind of that sort of that redundancy. And if I do have to shut down and isolate in the middle, then yeah, I can still monitor my sort of tank pressure. Whereas if I did have to shut down my left-hand post, it just kind of shuts it off, so it's not going to monitor sort of how much gas I have left. Whereas if I do still have something on my right, then I can still monitor how much gas I have left in that one remaining tank. It's just that redundancy thing. If you only have one sort of high pressure port, If you have a lot of travel lightweight sort of first stages, they'll only have sort of one high pressure port, which means diving with a transmitter and an SPG can be tricky. You can get these sort of Y splitters, which sort of basically turns one high pressure port into two. But yeah, if you do have two separate first stages, then yeah, just put sort of one on one and one on the other. Yeah, it's always good to have it on a short hose, just because yeah, as I said earlier, it's like 250 quid's worth of sort of technology. It's good to allow that to sort of bend and flex if it gets knocked. I'll be starting my tech training with doubles in January. Congratulations. Depending on how DIR they are, they're probably not going to like your transmitter. But hey, do what sort of feels right for you. Yeah. It's all sort of redundancy. If I can spread it so it's even across both first stages, then I'm covered in sort of all eventualities. And finally, Saif on Instagram asks, I have a suggested topic, and I understand that people have polarizing opinions about it. Sounds interesting. I still think it's a good topic to discuss, regardless of the opinion, of course. Diving with an SPG when you have wireless tank pressure data, so similar thing. If the opinion is, yes, redundancy is a good thing, I understand that it takes little to no effort to have the SPG along with your wireless data. Yep. But for sake of discussion, if I didn't have wireless data and my my SPG malfunctioned, I'd have bought the dive. Yeah, anybody would. Same idea with wireless. If you only had a transmitter, if it malfunctions, I'd have bought the dive, yeah. So at this point, most people would say that since having the SPG as a redundant task pressure instrument would prevent a premature aborted dive, why not have it? Hang on, let me read that again. So at this point, most people would say that since having the SPG as a redundant pressure instrument would prevent a premature aborted dive, would it have not? Well, because the likelihood of a well-maintained wireless module failing is low, yeah, so not having a bulky SPG every single dive, more convenient than having it and simply not needing to abort a dive. So yeah, again, it gets into the redundancy kind of side of things, and it is important to discuss. So if you have any sort of feelings, let us know down in the below. It's basically saying that can you dive with just a wireless air transmitter, because we only dive with sort of SPGs, or dive with both, and it's yeah, you can do whatever you want. Wireless sort of technology is pretty good nowadays. Touch wood, I don't think I've ever lost signal during a dive, as long as you can sort of keep on top of the sort of the battery levels, because a lot of the transmitters, they don't really say, oh, I've got so much battery left. Some of them do, but most of them don't. Yeah, as long as you keep on top of that, then yeah, you can save a lot of weight and a lot of bulk by sort of skipping out on the SPG. But yeah, it's just that kind of, I don't know. I think we're very much in that kind of transitional phase where the kind of the old guard are very much, my SPG, I'm going to keep that just for redundancy because that always works. Whereas with a transmitter, yeah, as long as you sort of maintain the battery life and make sure that it's always connected, then sure, if something did happen, then obviously you've been sort of paying attention, you know roughly how much gas you should have left, and either way, you're going straight up to the surface with your buddy. So yeah, it's horses for courses. You can do whatever you want in the water, to be brutally honest. Personally, I like that that kind of doubles, just because it's kind of that nice reassuring feeling if you have sort of two separate gauges that show very similar results. Yeah, Yeah, it is interesting. Let us know your feelings down below. Personally, I like both, just because I always like an analog gauge. Yeah, it is interesting because in that kind of technical sense of things, you're adding extra failure points, whereas on a transmitter, if you have it straight on your first stage, you only have one failure point really. You have that one O-ring, whereas with a submersible pressure gauge, you have like 3. So yeah, it is an interesting question. You can, I think transmitters are pretty good nowadays. You can just say, you know what, I'm just going to go straight down the transmitter route, and then you only really need 3 hoses. You can cut it down to like 2 if you have a like an Air 2 or something on your BCD instead of an Octo. But yeah, for me, I'll always dive with an actual analog SPG, just as that sort of redundant backup, and then I tend to use my transmitter more as something that I can analyze after the dive, so that I can see how my breathing rate changed at sort of different points. But no, it is an interesting question, and it is worth discussion, as are the rest of the questions. If you're a raid instructor or you've looked into it, let us know your sort of feelings down below. Different specialities. Are there any sort of interesting specialities that you would recommend? What else? Dry suits. Anything that you've sort of personalised on your dry suit? I don't tend to go for sort of putting names on pockets or sort of personalising things in sort of much way. I don't really see the point, to be really honest. But yeah, if there is anything that's that you specifically go, oh no, I put this on my dry suit and I will never go back, yeah, let us know down in the comments below. Tech dive and dive computers, aluminium backplates, mixing those, and then most of the questions towards the end were all about wireless air integration. So yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below. If you have any questions that you want answered, then yes, let us know. They'll all be corralled into next week's show. And if you have any interesting news stories that you've spotted, then yeah, again, sort of let us know in the comments, and they might get featured in next week's Daily Deco. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.